Welcome to First Universalist Church of Rochester, where we are called to nurture the spirit and serve the community. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. We welcome all of you. Today marks a bittersweet anniversary for our congregation. Bitter because it marks 1 year since we worshiped together in person in our beautiful sanctuary. Sweet because we remain together celebrating our congregation and serving our community. It is good to be together this morning. Reverend Lane is out of the pulpit this morning. Our guest in the pulpit is Reverend Richard Gilbert. Reverend Gilbert is a retired Unitarian Universalist minister, having served congregations in Cleveland, Ithaca, Golden, Colorado, and Rochester's First Unitarian Church for 32 years. He is now an active member of First Universalist. If you are here for the first time this morning, we especially welcome you. We have a visitor's form that can be found in the chat. Please click on it and fill out the form so we can offer you a welcome beyond this worship service. As we gather this morning, we want to invite you to pop into the chat and offer a greeting. Some of you already started to do this. You can find this at the top or bottom of the screen with an icon of a text bubble and the word chat. So please pop on over and offer a greeting. It could be a wave of hello or I'm here or whatever you prefer. Welcome to worship at First Universalist. Let us join hearts and voices in singing together this morning, recognizing that even as we are singing muted in our own home, we are creating a song across our city of Rochester, the country, and the world. Let us sing together hymn number 298, Wake Now My Senses.
Keep
When I think of dreams deferred, March's sermon theme, I think of Langston Hughes. To honor him, I have selected some lines from Freedom's Plow to share with you this morning. When a man starts out with nothing, when a man starts out with his hands empty but clean, when a man starts out to build a world, he starts first with himself and the faith that is in his heart, the strength there, the will there to build. First in the heart is the dream. Then the mind starts seeking a way. His eyes look out on the world, on the great wooded world, on the rich soil of the world, on the rivers of the world. The eyes see their materials for building, see the difficulties too, and the obstacles. The hand seeks tools to cut the wood, to till the soil, and harness the power of the waters. Then the hand seeks other hands to help, a community of hands to help. Thus the dream becomes not one man's dream alone, but a community dream. Not my dream alone, but our dream. Not my world alone, but your world and my world, belonging to all the hands who build. And so we sit together virtually this Sunday with a dream in our hearts, the dream of building a just world together. Come, my fellow builders, let us worship together. America is a dream. The poet says it was promises. The people say it is promises that will come true. The people do not always say things out loud, nor write them down on paper. The people often hold great thoughts in their deepest hearts, and sometimes only blunderingly express them and faultily put them into practice. The people do not always understand each other, but there is, somewhere there, always the trying to understand and the trying to say, you are a man. Together we are building our land. As we light our chalice at First Universalist Church and in your own homes, will you join me in saying our chalice lighting words in unison? May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Please join in saying our affirmation of faith, followed by our doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into the harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all. A long time ago, an enslaved people heading toward freedom made up a song. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on. That plow plowed a new furrow across the field of history. Into that furrow, the freedom seed was dropped. From that seed, a tree grew, is growing, will ever grow. That tree is for everybody, for all America, for all the world. May its branches spread and its shelter grow until all races and all people know its shade. Keep your hand on the plow, hold on. This congregation and denomination stand together in supporting justice for all people. We keep our hand on freedom's plow, and we hold on. Please click the link in the chat to give online to First Universalist Church, or feel free to send a check to the church.
Friends, today as we talk about the dream of democracy deferred, I am excited to tell you about John L. Cashin, who worked for democracy and the rights of African Americans like himself in Alabama nearly 50 years ago, and he was a Unitarian Universalist. One day in Alabama in 1968, as farmers worked in their fields, a small airplane swooped into view. The farmers looked up wonderingly as papers fluttered out of the airplane and into the sky and came swirling down to the earth all around them. The papers were flyers about the upcoming elections, flyers with a picture of an eagle and the names of the candidates the pilot of the airplane liked best. That pilot was John L. Cashin. He hoped those farmers would vote for the candidates of the National Democratic Party, a political party he founded to help African Americans run in Alabama's elections. He wanted the farmers and everyone else to know that these candidates, if elected, would use their positions in government to make life better and more fair for the farmers, their families, and all their neighbors. John Cashin was not only a pilot, he was a dentist, a husband, and father of three. He himself had run for mayor in his town of Huntsville, Alabama. He did not win. Later in life, he would run for the governor of the state of Alabama. He didn't win that either. But then again, he had never expected to win. In those days in Alabama, African Americans had little chance of winning public office, even though about 1/3 of Alabama's people were Black. The Alabama state government had no elected officials who were African American. Very few Blacks ran for election. Very few Blacks could even vote in elections. They were kept away by unfair laws, sometimes called Jim Crow laws, and by threats of violence by white people who did not want their Black neighbors to vote. So, with little chance to win, why did John L. Cashin run for mayor and then for governor? Well, John was an activist who understood the power of public witness, and he had made a promise when he was 11 years old to do whatever he could to get Blacks involved in the political process and to speak out against the injustices that kept them away. Every time John Cashin put his name on a ballot and his picture on an election poster or flyer, he caught the dreams of other African Americans in Alabama. Campaign speeches gave him a chance to make noise for justice, to speak out against laws that were not fair to African Americans. When John Cashin formed the National Democratic Party, he chose its symbol, an eagle, the well-known symbol of American freedom. With eagles printed all over their flyers, signs, and posters, the National Democratic Party made sure even Blacks who could not read could vote for justice-loving candidates, the ones with eagles by their names. Soon, African Americans in Alabama were running for sheriff, city councils, and judgeships, and the National Democratic Party helped many get elected. Cashin did not have to witness alone. His family, his Unitarian Universalist congregation in Huntsville, Alabama, and many other UUs and friends joined him. They came to his rallies, made their own speeches to support him, and helped him raise money to run for elections. Like John, they believed that to witness against the wrongs committed against African Americans was an important way to show their faith. Over time in Alabama, more African Americans voted. More African Americans ran for public office and won. As more African Americans became part of the Democratic and Republican parties, John Cashin's National Democratic Party was less important for public witness, and it was dissolved. Dr. John Cashin died in 2011. We can be a new generation witnessing for justice. Every time we speak up against a wrong or support people to speak up for themselves, we are part of John Cashin's legacy. He witnessed for the justice he wanted to see in his community and in our nation, an America where everyone's vote is counted. No matter how often it may seem like the dream of democracy is being deferred, as Fred Rogers would say, look for the helpers. Look for the helpers of democracy, like John Cashin, and all around you, who will never stop working until everyone's vote is counted.
I'm Clinton Swingle, and I've been asked to testify why I financially support First Universalist Church as we move forward through the ages. This is a building that stands today in the place where the original 1846 church building housing First Universalist stood. The church stood on this spot for 61 years at 26 South Clinton Avenue, which is about 2 blocks north of where our building is now. And this is the cornerstone, a touchstone, if you will, from that 1846 building. This cornerstone was placed inside of our current building that was built in 1907. I am always moved when I see it, and I like to think that the 1907 people wanted to say something forward through the ages to us. So let us imagine for a moment what the people of 1846 and 1907 were trying to say through this stone to us. I think they were trying to say, we were here before you in this place. Please do not forget us. We lived lives as you do, full of hard work and romance, while searching for meaning and working for justice. We made sacrifices to build and sustain First Universalists, and then we left all the best that we could do in our lifetime to you, the people of 2021, to build on. As much as I would love to live forever, I am not really much of a believer in an afterlife. But in true UU tradition, I am trying to keep an open mind about eternity. One way I do believe that I can live on after I die is to contribute to this church. My giving to this church provides a way for me to play a part in something that will continue to help people after my limited lifetime has ended. Today, the people of 1846 and 1907 live on through the bountiful inheritance I enjoy as I sit on a pew that I did not build, and I look at lovely stained glass windows while listening to beautiful music from an organ, and then I get to hear thought-provoking messages. Messages like a recent one that reminds me that I do not want to live in a small-hearted world. Messages that encourage me to be my best self and to help build a better community. All of this made possible by 175 years worth of people who gave of their hard-earned money that made it possible for this place to be here for me. Let me hasten to say, as lovely as our building is, our church's real beauty is in that it houses a faith community that allows for beliefs to continue to evolve while we are doing real good in real time in real people's lives. And I'd like to imagine that if I do my part, this church will still be here for people who need it 175 years from now in 2196. If 2020 has taught us anything, it has taught us that being alone and separate is not a good way for humans to live, and that social isolation does not lead to happiness. People live their best lives inside of community. Deep in my bones, I know that in 175 years, the world will still need a place like our church, where human connection and covenant is possible, a place where a responsible search for truth and meaning by a free people using reason and science is valued. So here in 2021, all of us, a motley crew of, shall we say, unique characters, this is our time. And our lives are better for being together in this church. So on our watch, Brian and me, our watch, we want to make sure our church keeps moving forward through the ages, through the past 175 years worth of people, through the people listening to me now who have been here supporting this place for decades before we arrived, through Brian and me to the future. Now, after all my talk of what we have inherited, let me close by reminding us of this. We do not really inherit this wonderful church or the world we live in from our ancestors. We are borrowing it from the people of the future, from our descendants. Let's do all we can during our time here to leave it in good shape for them. Thank you.
I invite you into this reverent time of sharing the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place your hand over your heart to be able to listen from this heart-centered place. As we place stones into a bowl, I will read aloud the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. All are also invited to share our joys and concerns in the chat that we may hear from the community gathered here. A joy from Dwight Montague. Went walking in Seth Green Park this week. Felt like spring. Well, you're right, Dwight. Next Sunday at 2 a.m., we set our clocks forward an hour. We spring ahead. A joy from Pan Jacobstein. Our oldest son, Mark, and wife Natalia are in Colombia, South America, to meet their adoptive daughter, Yurli Jacobstein Gomez. Our family is thrilled for them and ourselves. Fingers crossed that I can remember some Spanish. You will. From Brock, a joy that the choir was able to perform our choir Sunday music a year ago right before lockdown. A sorrow to be remembered that it has been a year apart. From Steve Searles, joy, my 856-year-old, I bet it's 86-year-old mother-in-law received her first COVID vaccine shot yesterday. That is a joy. Mary Jane Curry, birds are migrating back through Ellison Park. It is spring. From Nancy Gady, it's a joy being with my grandsons for a few days and then on to Alabama to see my big brother. You'll get some warmth there. From Steve Searles, oh yeah, his mother-in-law is 87. That's good. From Jim Milch, Kathy and Jim are enjoying visiting grandchildren in Brooklyn. Yay! Johanna Connolly to everybody. Inspiring, Clinton. You're a great presenter. A joy from Ezekiel McGee. I received my first vaccine dose this past Friday. I'm so glad for all those people who are having this joy. From John Lukes and Carol Zimberlin. We are so glad that the pandemic rescue plan has passed the Senate, and also that John got his second Moderna vaccine shot yesterday. From First Universalist, a joy from Emma. Joyful to be getting my first dose of the vaccine in exactly 1 week. Just got it scheduled. Yay, Emma. From Patricia and Dave Newman. Our son and daughter-in-law are here in Rochester for 6 months. A joy to have family next to us again, isn't it? From Peggy Schubert, happy to be joining from New York City. Happy you're here. From Carl, joy, saw 20 plus bald eagles yesterday near Onondaga Lake in Syracuse. Wow. From Fazella and Matt. Fazella and I hope to close on our house purchase outside Poughkeepsie this week. How lovely. From First Universalist Church, a joy from Lois Baum, whose eye surgery this past week went really well. She's recovering nicely. That is a great joy. And I saw that she could see us in the chat. From Kelly and Michael Scott, Shannon got her first COVID shot. Kelly is scheduled for hers. From Connie Valk, sad that Rochester Police Force continues to use inappropriate ways of dealing with our Black citizens. From First Universalist Church, second Connie. From Richard Reed, I got my first vaccine shot on Friday. From First Universalist Church to everybody, vaccine shots all around. It's so wonderful to see more and more people getting them. As we drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all the joys and sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, may all be held in the heart of love.
It is good to be with you this morning on the other side of the pulpit. I'm anxious as you are to be together again in person. but for now, Zoom is the tie that binds, and let us celebrate it. I invite you to settle down in wherever you are, your living room, your bedroom, your kitchen. Take a few deep breaths, and please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. There is something difficult about this particular time, in this particular climate, in this particular point of history. I feel it in myself. I sense it in those about me. I am just a little more impatient than usual. I am more often on edge. My spiritual resources feel depleted. I have pandemic fever. Partly it is the weather, partly it is an election aftermath, partly it is nature that speaks back to us. Partly it is a pandemic that seems to have no end. We go tired with the work we have to do and see no end to it. There are the tensions of an endless political mean season. Politicians pander, citizens protest, people are angry. There is malaise in the land. What to do? Enjoy the spectacle of winter becoming spring. Read a good book. Dig a garden. Plant some seeds. Come to church, even if virtually. Remember, you can't save the world in a day. Be a little more patient with one another. Pandemic fever, too, will pass away. Let us be silent together. Our hymn is number 1023, Building Bridges.
Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony. Building bridges between our divisions. I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Our reading this morning, The Hill We Climb, a few excerpts, of course, are the inaugural poem delivered so brilliantly and beautifully by Amanda Gorman. Words worth repeating today. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We brave the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what is just isn't always justice. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. And so we lift our gaze, not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first. We must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true, that even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried. That we'll forever be tied together, victorious. Not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promise to glade the hill we climb, if only we dare. It's because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation, become the future. Our blunders become their burdens. But one thing is certain. If we merge mystery with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. When day comes, we step out of the shade of flame and unafraid. The new dawn balloons as we free it, for there is always light, if only we're brave enough to see it. Here ends the morning reading. Is democracy a dream deferred? That is the question. My answer? I'm taking the fifth, but I get ahead of myself. Where were you on January 6, 2021? That question will be up there right along with the question, where were you on November 22nd, 1963 or September 11th, 2001? Expecting to be bored by the ceremony of the ritual of the Electoral College counting votes, I intended to watch only very briefly before repairing to my computer to catch up on the news. Then the news happened right before my eyes. Transfixed in disbelief and horror, I helplessly settled down to watch the near unraveling of a nation, only stitched tentatively together again in the wee small hours of January 7th. Close call. This perfect storm of political insurrection, health pandemic, increasing inequality, racist tribalism, and global climate change remind me of Barbara Tuchman's book, The March of Folly. She summarizes the classic historical blunders, among others, the Trojan horse episode in ancient Greece, King George's colossal mistake, and the American Revolution, the Vietnam War, among others. The last 4 years qualify for inclusion, right through January 6th, impeachment and acquittal. Democracy, it seems, is a dream deferred, in the immortal words of Langston Hughes. All that seemed rather distant until I happened on an article, "We are the dinosaurs. We are the meteors. Climate, biodiversity, and the human future." While it may have been a meteor which erased the dinosaurs from evolution, now we are the architects of both global climate and history. As Secretary of State Dean Rusk put it so graphically some years ago, 1/3 of the people of the world is asleep at any given moment. The other 2/3 are awake and probably stirring up trouble somewhere. These intersecting crises are the pre-existing conditions in the American body politic. I knew these problems were there, but I had no idea how pervasive they were. Trumps we will always have with us, but I am disturbed that Trumpism is so widely supported. Nearly half of all Republicans and 1/5 of registered voters think the January 6th insurrection was justified. Millions of people still doubt the validity of the 2020 election. Sometimes it seems like we are living in a failed state. But let's step back a moment and catch our collective breath. Do you remember science class in high school or college? Your untutored student eye pressed close upon the microscope's eyepiece. You looked into whatever it was, and you were astounded at the detail you saw. In bold relief were cells invisible to the naked eye, but suddenly clear to your amazed mind. Now, while medical researchers seek out the perfect vaccine by looking through their laboratory microscopes, we peer now through our moral microscopes, seeking the ethical state of the nation. This perfect storm of seismic crises reminds me of the Army scout who went out to scout the enemy, of course, and came back to his commanding officer with these words: "There's good news, sir. We can attack on any front. We're surrounded." And so it seems. Nevertheless, our predicament provides a unique opportunity for clarification of our national values and our religious perspective. So I invite you to focus your moral microscope on the USA Today using a Unitarian Universalist filter. In our insurrection hangover, we muster courage to see what is at stake in Pew, Pulpit, and Politics 2021 and beyond. What happens to a dream deferred? Well, what have we learned? We recently empathized with the people of Texas as they suffered through a winter storm that seems rather routine to us. The Lone Star State's climate denial, and I'd rather do it myself energy policy, were no match for Mother Nature's wrath. And while Senator Ted Cruz's not so excellent Mexican adventure and Governor Greg Abbott's assignment of blame to the Green New Deal have produced many a laugh for us, our Texas neighbors have had a sobering lesson in what the state of Texas can and cannot, will and will not do. The U.S., through FEMA, and yes, our tax dollars, rides to the rescue. We are part of an independent web of states, not so much of red, blue, or purple as red, white, and blue. If you remember Grover Norquist's image, his famous image, I don't want to abolish government. I simply want to reduce it to the size where I can drag it into the bathroom and drown it in the bathtub. This starve the beast mentality and philosophy has failed us. When you drown the government in the bathtub, some people die. We knew this already from our failure to deal with a novel coronavirus. Our 500,000 fatalities lead the world. We have learned that government at its best represents the better angels of our nature. And while we are quick to blame our pathetic response to COVID-19 on our ex-president, we the people are ultimately responsible. We allowed an inexcusably underfunded public health establishment to develop. In our obsession with privatization, we neglected basic health care, especially for the marginalized. Our failure in empathetic action makes a compelling case for a national healthcare system all by itself. And while touting our healthcare as the best in the world, it is far from that. For instance, our life expectancy has gone down 3 years in a row. And what accounts for our healthcare failure? Good old American individualism. Don't tread on me. The Lone Ranger mentality that tamed the wilderness has lodged itself in those whose interest does not extend beyond their own nose. American exceptionalism is one of the toxic amoebas we find by looking through our moral microscope. We have come to the point that wearing a mask or not is not an ethical statement, but a political one. Too many individualists have forgotten that wearing a mask protects not only themselves, but their neighbor as well. And yet we are beginning to experience mask burning parties in Texas and other places as well. These individualists see requirement to wear a mask as a violation of freedom, freedom ordained by destiny, by deity. But I compare today's mask refusers with the greatest generation. The nuisance of wearing a mask compared with the wartime sacrifices of our elders. Whatever happened to the common good? After all, the US Constitution's preamble begins with, "We the people," not, "It's all about me." Peering through our moral microscope, we learn that normalization just isn't enough. Our democracy needs more than incremental change. It needs radical reform in race relations, economic equity, climate change, and much more. Restoring normalcy is inadequate. The normal is riddled with injustice. And while politicians court the middle class, they neglect the poor. And the great majority of Americans try to walk up the down escalator while the 1% have their hands on the controls. It seems that most of our political debate occurs between the 40-yard lines, forgive the football imagery. Our debate never gets to the red zone where touchdowns are scored. And sometimes a crisis, which means danger and opportunity, provides the context for radical change. We ought not to let this possibility slip through our fingers. It is what theologians call a kairotic moment, when systemic change can be forged. There are many obstacles to those of us who envision a beloved community. Crucial to that ideal is a government which seeks to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, words you will recognize as from the Constitution's preamble. However, there is the inherent conservative bent in our founding fathers. For all their wisdom, and this I grant, they were mostly men of means, slave owners who steered us toward a tyranny of the minority, in which New York and Idaho each have 2 senators, in which it is possible to win the popular vote and lose, where gerrymandering leads to minority rule. I don't know how long we must endure these democratic policies, these anti-democratic policies, but for now, we have to deal with them. This subversion of democracy includes suppression of voters, mostly people of color, and the Supreme Court's Citizens United decision, which gives those with the most money the most voice. Donald Trump, in a way, is right, and it's hard for me to say that. Many of our elections are rigged, though not as he understands it. Every day seems to bring another blow to our grand experiment in democracy, a word that is strangely never mentioned in the Constitution. One astute observer put it this way: genuine democracy is difficult to achieve, and once achieved, fragile. In the grand scheme of human events, it is the exception, not the rule. Who in his right mind would choose the dull responsibilities of democracy over the instant gratification a demagogue will provide? I never was taught much about this in my 7th grade social studies class in Canandaigua's Union School, so many years ago. Democracy is not a given. It is a fragile work in progress, a dream forever deferred. Another obstacle is personal. Last fall, I drove past a large Trump sign on Route 14 in Seneca County. Vote for Trump and make the liberals cry. I was tempted, briefly, to stop for dialogue. But then I felt my hands tighten on the steering wheel and I drove on by. Frankly, I was scared, fearful of a violent confrontation. I even traded my Black Lives Matter sign for a more moderate one on my front lawn. We believe Black Lives Matter. No human is illegal. Love is love. Women's rights are human rights. Science is real. Water is life. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Okay, but no profiling courage. The Trump bump, which activated so many of us in 2016, must not give way to the Trump slump, which assumes all will now be well. As an elder, I can remember other critical periods in our history. Walking down the main street, the only street in Bristol, beating a kitchen kettle drum when victory was declared in 1945. I know exactly where I was when JFK was assassinated. I vividly remember the assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy when I was a minister in Ithaca. And I can recall the 1965 memorial service for James Reeb when I was in Selma. The memory of 9/11 opening the Unitarian Church for weeping and worship lingers. The point of this moral microscope gazing is that if we learn nothing else from this pandemic, it is that our nation is suffused in systemic injustice from sea to shining sea. There is in our land a moral myopia, close to blindness. Many of us have tried to speak truth to power with decidedly mixed results. Some of us are aging out. We long to pass the torch to a new generation. I live in the hope that others might gaze into their moral microscopes and find not only a vaccine, but the moral courage to continue the struggle for justice. Last Sunday afternoon, UU's for a Just New York launched, the successor to Interfaith Impact of New York State for Unitarian Universalists. Next Sunday, the still extant Rochester chapter of Interfaith Impact presents its annual legislative forum. And legislation before the Congress beckons our support. 2020 was a rough year. We can make 2021 the sequel, a jubilee year. But you may have heard that if you want to hear the gods laugh, tell them your plans. Or perhaps you would prefer the words of the mystic Rumi, who challenges us. Start a huge, foolish project, like Noah. It sounds like a formidable task, and it is. To change society into some version of beloved community will involve first a change in each of us. We will have to become moral microscope gazers who will march out of our lab to become change agents. As our UU prophet James Luther Adams said, the church is a spiritual center with a civic circumference. I think of one of my favorite cartoons. A man is standing before a directory of the Institute of Philosophy, staring at the labyrinth of corridors. Substituted for the usual "you are here" message are the words, "Why are you here?" A good question. Why are we here? Why am I here? I am here for one, to grow a soul, to love and to be loved, and to help repair a broken world. I believe politics, the humdrum work of democracy, is a religious value, and that active participation in that process is spiritual work, a spiritual discipline to which all of us are called again and again. Our youthful poet, Amanda Gorman, saw America as not broken, but unfinished, delayed, but not defeated. Our African-American ancestor in Unitarian Universalist John Cashin must have had the same feeling years ago in Alabama. Voting, of course, is a necessary but not a sufficient condition for democracy. America as a dream deferred? That is the question. My answer? I'm taking the fifth, not the Fifth Amendment avoiding self-incrimination, but our fifth Unitarian Universalist principle, which affirms and promotes the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. That is our charge. And so I leave you with an image that has seared itself into my mind and heart. It is the story of Judy Wells, a friend and ministerial colleague who took advantage of Oregon's medical aid in dying law. Last September 28th, at the age of 77. When her suffering from cancer became simply too much to bear, she obtained a life-ending drug cocktail from her doctor. In the presence of her family, she drank the potion and died shortly thereafter in their embrace. What adds poignancy to the story, however, is this. She had so wanted to vote in last November's election, but she could not make it. During the morning of her last day of life, what did she do? She wrote letters urging Pennsylvanians to vote in November. That afternoon, surrounded by her family, her work and her life completed, she died. Judy answered the question, why am I here? May we answer as eloquently as did she. Amen. Our final hymn is Hail, the Glorious Golden City. We invite you to remain muted and sing out joyfully from home, again creating a collective song from wherever we find ourselves. As we extinguish our chalice flame this morning, let us read together the words printed in your order of service and on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but we keep its light in our hearts with this message of love and justice, taking it outside these walls to the world we live in until we are together again. Though we cannot be seated next to one another, we are still connected in this community. As we come to the close of our service, I want to invite you into an embodied practice of holding hands from a distance. If you are joining us by video, please change your view to gallery view rather than speaker view, then reach out your hands to the end of the screen. For folks here by phone, place a hand over your heart and bring to mind someone you love from this congregation. And so now, live deeply, learn much, play the game with zest. Do not wallow in the past. Face the future unafraid. We are only here for a short visit. Don't hurry, don't rush, and don't forget to smell the flowers along the way. Have faith in the asking years before us. They are a blessing, and we are the blessed. And that the people of the church say, Amen. As we come to close this service, I invite you to follow the benediction with the words, democracy is not a spectator sport. Please join us in typing these words into our chat together. Amen.